Hi everyone, and welcome to our product demonstration today. I'm Caroline Hill, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and I'm here with Valerie McConnell, who is Senior Director of Customer Success at Thomson Reuters. Hi Valerie.
Hi Caroline, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. So Valerie was previously Vice President of Success at Casetext, which, as everybody will know, Thomson Reuters completed on acquiring last year, 2023. Do you mind just describing, we're going to talk to you today about Co-Counsel, as Casetext has obviously become. We're going to be talking about how it's used for document analysis, summarization, extraction, some of the use cases. Valerie is going to do a demonstration, which I'm looking forward to. Do you mind just describing your role at Thomson Reuters now before we sort of begin in earnest, as it were?
Sure, absolutely. So in my role, I manage our customer-facing teams that train and onboard and support our customers in the use of Co-Counsel. And I have to say, the most fun thing about my job is I get to hear from lawyers about novel ways in which they're using generative AI to transform the way they work. So essentially, we get to meet with our customers, mostly law firms, but also includes in-house counsel and lawyers and government, hear about their daily work, pain points in their workflows, and figure out how they can best deploy generative AI to fix those inefficiencies or just the more tedious aspects of practicing law.
Okay, thank you. So there's so many aspects of this that are really fascinating, and I know we're going to dive into the demo pretty soon, actually, because then that will give us sort of the base point for I've got lots of questions. But give us an overview of Co-Counsel as it is now, if you don't mind, and then I'd like to go on and talk about sort of the different types of AI and some of the things that we think that people need to be aware of if they're not already. But give us an overview of the product.
Sure. So we call Co-Counsel an AI legal assistant, and it is intended to help lawyers with the more tedious aspects of practicing law. And because Co-Counsel is legally trained and incredibly sophisticated at understanding language and legal texts, you can actually delegate to Co-Counsel many tasks that you may have previously delegated to a legal assistant. Now, more specifically, what Co-Counsel is, it runs on the latest version of GPT-4. So this is GPT-4o Omni, which just came out. So it runs on that large language model. But this is not a chat GPT skin or knockoff. I know there are quite a few products now that have generative AI and build on GPT. So what this is, we use GPT-4o as the base model, essentially the engine for the car. But we have done a ton of work building on top of the large language model to make this technology more useful for lawyers. And so Co-Counsel Core is a platform that utilizes the advanced language comprehension capabilities of GPT-4o, but applies them to common legal use cases. And specifically, this platform has a number of different applications. We call these Co-Counsel skills. They're designed to perform a wide range of common legal tasks. And also Co-Counsel, I'll note, is legally trained. This, of course, is different from GPT-4, which it was trained on a very vast amount of material, but has not been specifically trained and tested on legal use cases. So Co-Counsel's skills are oriented to helping lawyers review contracts and other legal documents, analyze insights from legal documents, summarize legal documents, and even do some legal drafting.
Yeah. So you refer to that in the round, we would refer to as retrieval augmented generation.
Exactly right. That's actually another important way in which we differ from a system like ChatGPT. You know, when you play around with ChatGPT, it will generate answers, and oftentimes the answers sound fantastic, but you have no idea what they're based on, right? ChatGPT will just generate text. With Co-Counsel, when Co-Counsel provides an answer to your questions, it has to show its work. And that is because of retrieval augmented generation. We force the large language model to ground its answers in specified data. And with Co-Counsel Core, the idea is you provide documents that you want Co-Counsel to read and analyze. So that data could be your firm's library of contractual precedent. That could be your firm's brief bank. That could be documents that you're working on, docket records. And when you upload those documents to Co-Counsel and ask Co-Counsel to analyze or summarize or answer questions against those documents, Co-Counsel has to show you where it found the information supporting its answers from those documents. So it has to show its work.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so important to have your sourcing. I mean, we've seen some. I'm going to ask you about hallucination, but we've seen some horrible examples, haven't we, with general ChatGPT, where it's just turned up a load of nonsense, it's just fascinating to me. And this is something so. I mean, it's not new anymore because we've been talking about Gen AI for so long, but this is something that certainly is important. I'm sure everybody now realizes that you have to have a source.
Absolutely. It's important for reliability, and also it facilitates user verification, which is
Yeah.
key. We're still in the realm of trust but verify. We do a ton of work in testing on CoCounsel to make it reliable. At the end of the day, it's not a lawyer. It's not a substitute for a lawyer's judgment. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for a lawyer to use CoCounsel and also understand what its answers are based on.
And would you say so that additional legal training, that RAG, as we call it, not the best name in the world, so retrieval augmented generation, that then what differentiates effectively general AI versus specialized AI?
That's one important component, actually forcing a large language model to ground its answers in specified data. Another thing that differentiates CoCounsel, makes a specialized use AI, is all the training and testing work we do. So this is an alternative career path for lawyers. We have a team at Thomson Reuters. We call them the trust team. They are licensed lawyers. They work with our data scientists and machine learning engineers to develop tests for a large language model. So think of developing law school type exams for a machine. And beyond just, of course, law school type exam, but they essentially, based on their practices and a lot of work we have done with our analytics team, they develop tests for CoCounsel, tests on legal use cases and documents, to ensure that CoCounsel performs accurately. And that kind of testing and training is not done with general use AI. You don't focus on a specific practice area or a specific profession. So actually what we have found, and this is working as intended, we'll have customers enter the same query into ChatGPT and CoCounsel, and they'll get different answers, which is to be expected. CoCounsel will interpret those questions through a legal lens, and will also route the user's query to one of our CoCounsel applications or skills that are designed for specific legal tasks.
Interesting. See, I mean, we have probably not got time on this product demonstration, but it's fascinating you talking about different alternative careers, which of course there's going to be lots. So, and in terms of, what people, there's so many challenges for the purchaser. So do we know in terms of the accuracy? So you've got people feeding into this the whole time, but how can people be confident of the accuracy?
That's an excellent question. And at present, we have not published our test results simply because there is a lot of proprietary confidential information that goes into our testing system. We are working on publishing that. Our trust team is quite proud of all the work they've done. We're just trying to figure out now a way of disclosing that without revealing any sort of trade secrets. So I can't speak to those statistics now, but what I can say, when people ask, well, how do I know if it's accurate? What we do go back to is the user verification piece. When CoCounsel gives you an answer, it'll have to give you a hyperlink and an excerpt from your document. So it's really easy to look and see, did CoCounsel misinterpret my question? And, most of the time, so I mean, the first point is, in my 2 years of working on CoCounsel, this thing doesn't miss the mark much. But when it does, right, machines are not perfect. When it does, you can see actually where it missed the mark. It oftentimes is a matter of misinterpreting the user's question. And so you can see in your prompt and how the AI interpreted your question and the answer it provided that disconnect. So actually that's where user verification is really, or also the showing its work is really important.
Yeah.
You give the AI a bunch of documents and ask it questions. You can look at the answer to his questions and realize, oh, you know what? I didn't define this term, or this term was a bit ambiguous and interpreted this way. So that, I think, knowing how to verify the AI's work, and also even beyond CoCounsel, using a software that facilitates user verification, I think is very important for lawyers who want to use AI in their practices.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, as a former associate, associates also get things wrong.
Yeah, I was one too.
Especially ones like me.
It's a bit different as an associate when you work long nights and you're a bit tired. Those type of errors usually caused by too little coffee and not enough sleep.
Yeah. I remember it very well. That's probably why I'm not one these days. But anyway, it has been a really long time. So, and then before we get onto the demo, so so Thomson Reuters often talks about the responsible use of GenAI. There's been so much talk in the press and conversations amongst end users about what that means. So, and sometimes, you know, it's easy to say, oh, we use it responsibly, but what does it mean when Thomson Reuters says it?
Use it responsible. Yes. So one way in which we emphasize responsible use, we also make this really clear in the product itself. We say that this is not a replacement for a lawyer's judgment, which may sound obvious, but it really isn't. And so actually, when you use our Westlaw generative AI product, there is that disclaimer reminding you that you need to check the AI's work. Same thing within Co-Counsel. It doesn't mean you can't use it. It's not a valuable tool, but we do set the expectations that you still, as a lawyer, need to use your brain, right? This is a tool. This is a tool to enable you to get closer to the answer, you know, get 80% of the way there, but the lawyer still has to bring their experience, their analysis, their knowledge of their client. So one thing we do with the responsible use is emphasize this is not a substitute for the human lawyer. The other thing we do with responsible use, again, is I'll speak to our rigorous testing program. It's something we take incredibly seriously. We don't cut any corners there. And actually, I'll say this, sometimes we have customers complain that we don't let Co-Counsel do enough. So Co-Counsel is restricted to only doing things in the skills we have on our platform. Now, lawyers, what you can do complex workflows where you combine outputs from different Co-Counsel applications or skills to create something new, but we don't let Co-Counsel just draft a brief, right? Why don't we let it do that? Because we don't have that application out. And so actually we put guardrails around the large language model to prevent it from just generating text if there is no source, and also if it's outside of the skills we have tested. So people may find that they can get ChatGPT to do all sorts of wild things that we don't allow Co-Counsel to do, and that goes back to the responsible use.
Okay, that's fascinating. Do you mind, so you're going to do a demo, that would be great. I know so Co-Counsel has 8 different skills, as you call them, with different types of functionality. I think you're going to pick out, as you know, a couple of, or however many you want really, in the time we've got, that particularly perhaps relevant within the knowledge management arena. Yes. It'd be great if you can run through some use cases, and I'll have some questions as we go.
Absolutely. I'll start sharing my screen now, and let's dive in. So here's the Co-Counsel homepage. And I mentioned there are 8 different skills. If you want to see those, you can click here, and Co-Counsel will explain the different skills it has on our platform. Currently, we have 8 different skills, and I'll show a few of them today. This option here, so Co-Counsel Core is intended to help lawyers review, analyze, and summarize documents. We also have an integration with Westlaw Precision in the US, and we are working on an integration with Westlaw Edge UK to be out a little bit later this year. But here are the different applications or skills. And now for knowledge management, one that we have found is especially compelling is this skill up here called search a database. So what you can do is you can set up a database on the Co-Counsel platform. And by database, I really mean a repository of files. Lots of different use cases here. Common use cases include using search a database to help you search your firm's contractual precedent. And I'll show you this now. You can also use to search through brief banks and docket records. Essentially, anytime you want your AI legal assistant to search a large volume of documents to answer a legal question, this is a great tool to use. So let me demonstrate this now. So of course, you're looking at the inside of my account. I have a lot of databases. Well, here's one I'm going to show here. This happens to be a database that, as you can see, contains about 38,000 files. This is a database that we set up that contains filings from the SEC Edgar website here in the US. Specifically, it contains things like 8Ks, 10Ks, 10Qs, and associated exhibits. But here, this is one example of how you could point the AI at a database of contracts and transactional documents. And one use case is to use AI to search your database of contracts to evaluate trends. So right here, I'm asking the AI, search this database to answer the following question. What is the typical period of a non-compete clause in an executive employment agreement? Certainly not the only question I could have asked, but this is the type of question that you can ask AI where other types of machines would struggle. I am asking it to evaluate trends across these documents. So the first thing the AI is going to do is look through these documents and find securities filings that attach executive employment agreements, and then find those as non-compete clauses, but then use its sophisticated training and understanding of language to evaluate the duration across non-compete clauses. So this is not just a simple keyword search or a Boolean search. This is where generative AI shines. It is using its training and its knowledge of language to do this kind of higher level analysis. So this will run, it should be done in a couple of minutes. It is pretty quick. It is going through 38,000 files. While that runs, I can quickly show an example just of another query I ran using the same skill, just to show you the range of potential use cases here. So another way in which we have firms using the search database technology is to help them search through documents to evaluate risk. What I did in this use case here is I pointed CoCounsel at this database here that contains contracts, and specifically it contains about 1,200 manufacturing contracts. And then I asked the AI this question: evaluate the manufacturer's liability under these contracts for breach if a pandemic disrupted the supply chains. I chose this question not simply because the pandemic is still topical, unfortunately, but because this is an example of how you can ask the AI the hard questions. I am asking a machine to look through contracts and evaluate potential risk or liability for my client. And at the end result, when you ask the AI to search your database, it generates a report that looks like this. I'll show you this example here, and we'll revert to the live example momentarily. But at the top, what we see is a short answer synopsis answering my question directly. And so here it tells me that actually many of the contracts contain force majeure clauses that would protect manufacturers from liability in the event of a pandemic. It goes on to note that most of these clauses specifically mention epidemics as a force majeure event. So most of these contracts don't contain the word pandemic, but that's okay. AI doesn't look for keywords. It understands synonyms. It understands concepts, giving you a much more holistic look at your documents. So for lawyers in KM, this is a very efficient way to search through your documents because it's doing this kind of rich contextual, conceptual analysis. And then at the bottom here, I mentioned we force that AI to show its work. So you don't just get this short answer and be left wondering, what is this based on? The AI is now bringing back contracts from my database that contain the relevant clauses. So in a few minutes, you can go through thousands of contracts or other documents to find the relevant information. And what you can always do is check the AI's work. So here, for example, I can click on page 14, this hyperlink to this agreement, and see where the AI is pulling from here. And so I clicked on that link, and now it's highlighted for me the relevant section for my contract. So that's one example here. Let's go back now and look at the live example. So the AI is now done going through those 38,000 securities filings. And so this is the same format, just a different question here. It says, based on the results, the typical duration of a non-compete clause in an executive employment agreements seems to be around 12 to 24 months. So, that could be helpful information, especially if I am a lawyer who's new to drafting non-compete clauses and I want to know, how this is normally done or how my firm typically approaches it. I can search through my firm's precedent using this technology. And as you saw in the time that I've been talking, went through all 38,000 files and provide a list now of precedent that I can pull from that contain force majeure clauses. So that's the search of database technology.
Can I interrupt you? Yeah, that'd be great. Can I jump in? So what databases can it search? Like, so for law firm, what is it capable of? What typically are law firms using it for in terms of databases?
Yeah, so you can set up your own database, and of course we can help with that. But typical use cases for databases include, so for litigators, for example, I recommend setting up different databases for different cases or clients that the firm is working with. So for example, you could set up a database containing docket records from one case and have everything in there. And so the AI could do searches and analyses of trends across records for that case. You can also set up databases that contain documents by client. So if you work on a lot of different contracts for client, you can have a database that contains those clients' records. You can also even do databases by industry. Really, the question about what is best for your database, you want to think about what type of analysis do you want the AI to do? Because when the AI analyzes information in your database, it will only look within your database. It won't search Google. So if you want it to do an analysis, for example, on trends across an industry, you'd want to make sure your database just contains reports and filings for that industry.
And then you said, so you can, but you can also upload your documents. So they could either use it as kind of an analysis tool across perhaps a wider database, or else if you want to extract information from perhaps a smaller subset of information, you'd then upload those into Co-Counsel.
Yeah, I can show that now. So exactly right. So databases are great if you have a repository of documents you want the AI to look at over and over again, or you want to run this kind of analysis through a large volume. We recommend setting up a database. But let's say you just wanted to, you don't have to set up a database. You can also have the AI do more of a manual review. And so the search database, I think, is a great way to evaluate trends and understand information on a topic. You can also ask the AI to do a word-by-word review of every single document. That is called the review document skill. And so the way it works is, right now, I'm just going to upload documents without creating a database. I'm just going to manually upload those from my computer here. And right now, I'm going to give it a nice assortment of distribution agreements. And one thing that I want to call out here as I'm uploading these contracts is these contracts are not all written in English. So I think another great use case for this technology and for generative AI more broadly is if you have a multilingual practice. So here I just uploaded my contracts, and now I'm going to ask the AI to review these contracts to answer some questions. And I'm just going to type that right into the chat. That is the main way to navigate Co-Counsel. You just chat with it. On this platform here, the word review means something specific. It means telling the AI, read every word of these contracts. And I'm typing in a bunch of questions I want the AI to answer. And one thing I'll call out is you can ask the hard questions. So I am asking the AI to evaluate whether any trends would be considered negative for the buyer in an M&A transaction. Again, I think where AI shines are these tricky questions. There's a lot of technology out there that you can use to do basic keyword searches, kind of a basic review of contracts. But if you want the AI to help you understand things like potential liability or whether one term is more favorable to one party, AI can do that kind of analysis. So I'm just going to type in these questions here. It's going to do the review. And what it's going to do, it's going to take a few minutes here to and here it's confirming the questions I wanted to answer. It's going to take a few minutes to analyze these documents in response to my questions. And again, with review, it's going to read every word of every document. So this will take a few minutes. So while this runs,
jumping. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, you've got a plan, Valerie. I was going to.
I have backup. I know. I have backup examples to show while we're waiting. I always hate it when people, even if it's only a few minutes, I hate kind of the dead time when people watch that progress bar. But please, Caroline, go ahead.
I want to see that, but I just wanted to ask real quick. So we talk a lot about prompt engineering and making sure that you have to get the question right to get the right answer. We talk a lot about creating templates or libraries or whatever. But you're saying that you can, even to get the kind of best answer, you can just converse pretty much freely.
You can just talk to it, much like you would with a human colleague. So a couple of caveats to that. So one thing that I think the Co-Counsel product team should be proud of is we have actually built in what we call query comprehension. That means that if a user enters a truly bad prompt, the AI will wordsmith it to make it more understandable. That actually takes some of the burden off the user. You don't have to be a prompt engineer to use this. As you saw, you can just type your questions in. Now, as somebody who also helps to teach prompting, we of course still recommend some best practices just to avoid confusing the AI. And that includes things like you want to use specific words over vague and ambiguous terms, right? If it would confuse a human, or if a human could interpret your question multiple different ways, the AI can too. We also recommend people being a bit more precise with the scope of their questions. One thing I have learned, and I think this is just a reflection of how a lot of us learned in law school, a lot of lawyers, and myself included initially, like to start with really broad searches, really broad, because we're taught in law school to search broad and then to filter. But with AI, you can just cut to the chase. You can just tell the AI, this is what I want and how I want it. And it's much more likely to give you what you want if you're really specific and precise with your demands than if you just ask it this broad question. So there are still some prompting best practices to get optimal results. But we have done a lot of work in product to take that onus off the user. The user doesn't have to go back and get a degree in prompt engineering. It's offered now.
I interrupted you. Please do show your your backup and then the results. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick here, just to show off Co-Counsel. So I have that contract example running in the background. What I'm showing here, my pre-loaded example, it is more litigation focused. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I myself am a former litigator, and I know I've showed a couple of more contractual transactional examples. So I just wanted to kind of round out the offerings here. But in terms of other use cases for this technology, so with the review functionality, you can have it review contracts to answer questions. You can also have it review litigation documents. This document here that I uploaded earlier, this happens to be a transcript from a deposition in a labor and employment case. You can use deposition transcripts, or if you're outside of the US and you don't have to deal with our depositions, trial transcripts, really any document you want your AI legal assistant to analyze. But here what I want to point out are the hard questions I asked and how the AI is able to deal with those. So what do I mean by hard questions? Well, the AI can help you find inconsistencies in testimony, contradictions. That is something that is incredibly hard to search for with traditional machine technology. It can also help you identify potential bias or lack of reliability just from reading the text and evaluating what the witness is saying. Of course, it can help you evaluate discrepancies or inaccuracies in the witness's recollection based on other records you give it. It can help you evaluate demeanor. This one always strikes me as kind of eerie. This technology can evaluate tone. It can read text and, based on the connotations of words and its knowledge of expressions, it can tell you whether the witness is being evasive or angry or frustrated. So it can evaluate demeanor. It can help you evaluate instances where the witness goes beyond their personal knowledge. I asked it to evaluate where the witness is well prepared and where the witness admitted to damaging information. So, this is the kind of stuff that litigators, of course, look for in their cases. Where they're trying to impeach a witness. Is the witness credible? Is the witness well prepared? What was the witness's demeanor like? Is the witness testifying beyond the scope of their knowledge? And the AI can go through a 400-page transcript and answer these questions. And that's what I had it do here. So just to look at the results, and we'll then pivot to the live example. So when you ask the AI to run a review, we look at the search option, which showed a report. In review, the AI will generate a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is just kind of long and skinny because I just gave it one document. But in your spreadsheet, every document you give Co-Counsel will have its own row, and every question will have its own column. And here you'll see some short answers. But what I encourage our users to do is to click in this cell and see this side-by-side view. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about user verification. We try to make it as easy as possible for our users to see where the AI is pulling from. So here, in response to that question about witness demeanor, the AI said calm and cooperative. But I'm not just stuck with that short answer. The AI has to show its work. And so here it provides more detail as to why it found the witness to be calm and cooperative. And I can click on show sources in document and get the specific pages where the AI found evidence of the witness's demeanor. And so this is what I mean by you can check its work. This type of technology facilitates that verification. All right, I'm sure everyone is wondering what is the results of that contract review. So we can show that just to kind of close things out. So just as we saw earlier, this is review. So we have a spreadsheet, and every document I uploaded has its own row here, and every question has its own column. One thing I wanted to point out here is this contract down here is in Chinese. So for lawyers who are navigating multilingual practices and have to deal with documents in other languages, this makes it really expedient to toggle between contracts in Chinese or Dutch or French or Spanish and English, all in one product. So I asked it for about negative terms that would, or terms that be considered negative for a buyer in M&A transaction. Let's look at the Chinese contract. It answered yes. We can click in the cell and see this side-by-side view, where we can compare the AI's answers to the underlying document. Just loading now. So it is in Chinese, which I don't know. So I guess to some degree with user verification, I'll have to take the AI's word for it. But just as we saw earlier, it does show you exactly where it's pulling from and how it's interpreting the different information in the document. So the output is in English, even if the underlying document is in another language. And here it explains its reasoning. So here it shows you how it's actually interpreting this Chinese character as a distributor.
Okay. In light of time, I mean, were there other examples? Or I think, to be honest with you, we're getting quite close to time. But was there anything else? I always have so many questions. But was there anything else that you really wanted to show?
Unfortunately for you and others could talk about this technology all day, so I'll stop myself to make sure that I answer the questions.
But I just wanted to, I think we can just squeeze in one real quick question, which is, so with those questions that you're asking, they are almost, they have a subjectivity to them. So is it by producing its work effectively that we can make sure that it doesn't have any kind of bias that we haven't anticipated, that sort of thing?
Exactly right. And that is especially critical with the type of subjective questions I asked. Now, just to make one thing clear, one does not have to ask the kind of weird subjective questions I did. You know, I did that intentionally to highlight how this technology functions so differently from other types of technologies, which you couldn't ask those questions at all. If you asked a machine previously to evaluate a human being's demeanor, right?
No,
but
you couldn't.
Right. When you're dealing with questions that can be interpreted multiple different ways that are open to subjective interpretation, and you have the AI respond, it is really incumbent on the user to do, you know, they don't have to go through and redo everything the AI did, but that's why we provide those hyperlinks. We make it easy just to quickly check and see, okay, I understand how it interpreted my question. I like how it answered. Let's see where it found information in my document. It still saves you a ton of time than going through a 400-page transcript by hand.
No, 100%, 100%. There's so many questions that I probably haven't been able to ask, but I found that so fascinating. And you know, the use cases I know are more extensive even than we've been able to sort of go through. But I do find that the ability to ask those kind of very in-depth questions around demeanor, etc., that's quite extraordinary, actually. Valerie, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I think that we'll have opportunities to speak more further down the line, and I know that if anybody has further questions that we haven't been able to answer, we'll provide contact details alongside this recording. So it just remains to say thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.